I'm a lot clearer about who I am in the world. I can tell you I went from not feeling okay in my skin to feeling pretty good in my skin. I went from not being able to show up to anybody, not to myself, not to friends, not to work, not to gigs, nobody, no romantic relationship, to being able to show up in my life. I went from feeling like I had no purpose to feeling like I had purpose. I went from not having, intimate, honest relationships with people to having an entire community of like minded people. It's been the most abundant piece of my life.
My name is Fana Asfa, and after doing the backbreaking work to save and reclaim my own life, my passion now is to help others do the same. Since writing my debut book, Sober Daughter, the amount of people that wanted more inspired me to create this podcast. This space is for both real people and industry professionals to share inspiring experiences and usable tools for us all to connect and heal ourselves together. In today's episode, we'll discuss how sobriety can change your life with Katie Riggs. She is an award-winning celebrity vocal coach, has been coaching the elite here in Los Angeles for over 23 years, and is one of the most sought-out vocal coaches in the world. Born and raised in Los Angeles, she travels all over the world to coach some of the biggest artists like Dua Lipa, Madison Beer, and even Ozzy Osbourne. That is incredible, and she has such a big and rich life, and there is a secret that I know, and that is that she does it all sober. But we'll get to that later. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Well, I was just thinking, like, what's the secret? Oh my God, I got to prepare myself. But not really a big secret in the context of what I do because I live very much out loud. It's not a secret for me at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's huge because you're going to talk with us about, your sobriety, what it's like being sober in the music industry, and tools for us, like how you travel all over the world with these top artists in these, really kind of dicey situations, maybe studio sessions, maybe behind stage, and maintain your sobriety the whole time. I mean, that's really what I'm so curious about. But first of all, I just wanted to know, how did you start this big life? Like, how did you get into singing and working with artists and being in the music industry? Where did that all start?
So it started off right here in Hollywood. I grew up in a very musical family. My mom was an opera singer and she met my dad in a lesson. And I grew up around a lot of music. My mom actually learned how to teach through my dad. And growing up, I would watch my dad teach all kinds of different people. And from a really young age, he said, well, like, why don't I teach you how to teach? You can actually use this gift of singing that you have. And so I started training myself I didn't actually start training myself. My dad started training me when I was like about 7 or 8 years old as a singer. And then when I was 15, 16, 17, every day I would come home from school, from high school, and sit in and learn the ins and outs of why what I was doing would work for other people. And he taught me how to teach. And so I started teaching when I was 17 years old. And my first client was, I think, probably in his 50s. And it felt really scary at first. And I remember my dad putting me in a suit with penny loafers. And yeah, it was just really scary. And back then, it was a learning curve, learning how to communicate with adults and with, kind of the confidence and conviction of knowing what I know and being able to translate that. And so that is literally what I've been doing for the last 23 years, is teaching all kinds of talent, from those that are out there doing the deal that we've, our household names, to, the beginning novice singer wanting to learn how to sing.
That's incredible. I just imagine you in the penny loafers in a little suit, just getting ready for your big lesson. I think it's so great. And I'm just, how did that transition from you being the student and then being the teacher? And is that when, like where did your sobriety start to look like it might be important for you? Was it once you became a teacher?
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I started checking out with the substance of food as my anti-anxiety drug when I was really, really very young, probably around 7, 8, 9. I was born into the world where I felt a little bit like foreign to the human experience. I didn't have a lot of tools and any kind of emotional tools. I was just trying to exist, and my using career with drugs and alcohol came into play when I was very young at 11 years old, and it didn't stop until I was 27. So a lot of the circumstances changed, being in school and then going to junior high and high school, and figuring out what I was going to do. I mean, there was definitely thoughts at the very beginning of, is this actually really something that I want to do? But I mean, that didn't last too long because I just kept going with it. But I didn't realize that I had any kind of problem until I was 27 years old. And but I think also part of your question was how I went from a student to a teacher. And that was actually quite easy for me because I was already doing the exercises for, what is that? If I started at 8 and then I was 17 when I started, yeah, 9 years. So I was already in the work, I was in it. So transferring to being a teacher was not so much difficult in the way of my skill set. It was difficult in the way of my maturity level. I mean, even being put in, a suit when I'm 17 and I'm a punk rocker by night and a teacher by day.
Yeah, I think it's really relatable that you talk about, the first form of escapism for you was food.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, have trouble identifying, ways that they've been maladaptively coping for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate because for me, that was sleep. I loved to sleep. I mean, I would sleep just through everything and all the time and eat eat my feelings away and the anxiety. So, I mean, you had a lot of pressure put on you at a really young age, even though it was really joyful, it seems like that was a lot to be kind of thrown into. So, it's understandable that that kind of came out the way that it did.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that my teaching was so stressful that it led me to drugs and alcohol. I think that I'm maladaptive just right off the bat, not having the drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Uh, how do I say this? It wasn't because of that. I think that there's a big debate on whether you're born a certain way or not.
Uh-huh.
But and who knows? Who knows if I had gotten the emotional nurturing within the context of my family, if it would have ended up like it ended up.
Who knows?
Um, all I know is that the buck stopped there when it stopped, and that there was no, there was really no other option but to be abstinent. And I didn't think about that at the time. I just had completely run out of good ideas.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really smart to talk about because the acceptance piece is that, you were able to say, it doesn't really matter why I'm here.
Yeah.
And this is what needs to happen now. And so I love this part because I get really inspired by people who talk about their sobriety and how they got sober without treatment. And, treatment is a huge deal right now, and it's a big space for people to go to, but not many people have all those options. And so I love to hear people who didn't go to treatment. And so tell me how you were even able to get sober, understand what that meant for you on your own.
I think a great deal of it has to do with my willingness. The willingness paired with, at the time, I had a best friend that I was rolling around town acting crazy with, and she had gotten 45 days. And that was mind boggling to me how she could stop what she was doing for 45 days.
Mhm.
And so it was like the great cross section between being willing, having other people that because my sister is in recovery as well. So her being a sober person, and then a friend that partied like I did, and being completely devastated by my inner life, being completely and utterly just spiritually bankrupt. It was a cross section of all of those things that led me to getting sober. I did actually look up different treatment centers.
Okay.
And the reason why I didn't go to treatment center was because I didn't want anybody to know, and
Mm.
I didn't want to pay the money. There was going to be no one coming to pick me up and drop me off. And so again, it was just like complete devastation, and the willingness and a couple of people that I knew that were sober to kind of spawn this entirely different lifestyle for me.
That's incredible. I think that's so incredible that we can have that much of an effect on someone if we share our sobriety or any way that we're recovering and healing from, trauma, because the less we talk about it, people think they're alone in it. And that one girl sparked so much.
Yeah, and also too, I feel like when you're sick of your own shit, it starts coming out really sideways. And for me, I started talking about it to a client that I had, which looking back, that wasn't very professional at all. But in the same token, that person saved my life. There was something that attracted me to this client. She always showed up on time. She had like clarity and a brightness about her, and she seemed like her inner life felt good, and I was really attracted to that light, and so she helped me along too.
And
Yeah.
how does it feel now that you've have, I believe, many, many years of sobriety? And what does it look like now compared to those early days?
I could say now that I've been clean and sober for 13 years, I'm a lot clearer about who I am in the world. I can tell you I went from not feeling okay in my skin to feeling pretty good in my skin. I went from not being able to show up to anybody, not to myself, not to friends, not to work, not to gigs, nobody, no romantic relationship, to being able to show up in my life. I went from feeling like I had no purpose to feeling like I had purpose. I went from not having, intimate, honest relationships with people to having an entire community of like-minded people. It's been the most abundant piece of my life. My teaching is right up there with feeling fulfilled, but I wouldn't have my teaching if I weren't sober, because I would have burned it all down and, lit up, fires and all of the different, relationships and stuff. So yeah, it has been the greatest blessing of my life, to be sober, and I am very well aware of the insidiousness of my brain around, having this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it illness or maladaptive, whatever. I am very aware that it still exists. And so I have to take care of myself on a daily basis. So if you're asking, you just asked, like, well, what's the difference between now and then? It was like, just staying diligent, like staying committed to the process of taking care of myself. So when things happen today, and I can always make mountains out of molehills, but like I have it like an easier way about life that, it's like if something little would have happened back in the day, it would be like, oh my God, I can't show up. I need to hide underneath the covers. I need to, tell this person I can't do this, that, and the other. And now I can like breathe, and take a pause and like be able to show up accordingly. I'm useful in my life now, whereas before, I was leading like this double lifestyle and really suffering. I don't suffer like that anymore. I'm still a human being. I have times of grief and loss and trauma that likes to kind of rear its head, but it's all manageable today versus back in the day. It was like it felt way more paralyzing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good word. Paralyzing is, in the beginning, it can feel like it's absolutely paralyzing that you don't know that you need to get help or you don't understand what's going on. And then you talk about like how sobriety gives you this big, beautiful life, and none of it would be there if you weren't sober. So I love that. I love that so much. And speaking of bopping around and being able to show up for your life, I see you all over. I follow you and I see you at shows with your clients. I see you at festivals with your clients, at studio sessions. And I just want to know, what are you practicing and what helps you keep your recovery at the forefront, like you talked about, when you're around, spaces and people and places and things that can be the complete opposite of sobriety and maybe a little dangerous or toxic, or there's drugs, or there's a lot going on. How do you make sure that you put yourself first in your recovery?
Great question. I Taking care of myself is my number one priority. And so I live from that context of needing to take care of myself. So that means, it's not that I can't be around alcohol. I don't mind people catching a buzz around me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me desire it. I don't mind it. I really don't. But there's a time when the energy tilts. It
Mhm.
goes from an easy buzz and then it gets a little dark. And when I see it getting dark or tilted, that is my cue to leave. I also was told at the beginning of my sobriety journey that I needed to change my playground. So I really don't have any business in a bar. I mean, I might find myself in a pool hall where there's a bar and pool tables because I love to play pool, but I'm going there not just to kind of hang out. The more I take care of myself, the more useful I am to other people. I'm not, creating unnecessary drama. I basically, like, I'll go out to in the context of a show, I'll watch my student, I'll talk to the student, I might warm them up before their gig, I talk to people afterwards, and then I'm out, like sometimes I might hang out, but again, when the energy, it's not if the energy, it's when the energy starts to turn, that is a cue for me to leave. At this point of my life, I feel very secure and confident about, I don't know, my boundaries. Do you know what I mean? Like in early sobriety, like there was no way I could be in a bar and for any reason and feel like I didn't want it. Like I definitely would want to partake. But that's like completely off the table. So it's a lot easier. I can say I am completely uninterested to to engage in that way. I just have no, it's just like my lifestyle and everything has shifted so much that I feel so good about showing up and being able to then, be helpful to my clients and then be able to go home and go to sleep and like get a good night's sleep and wake up early and know what I was doing the night before, and I'm not feeling sick because I didn't overdo it. It's like the blessings are just like so major. And so yeah, it doesn't it again, I always keep this as a priority for me, and other things kind of fall in line.
Yeah, but the key word I heard you say, which is so important, is boundaries. To learn and to be able to practice boundaries is like mind blowing, because so many people, when they're new in sobriety, have, drinking is based around people pleasing. It's, will you like me? Can I get more involved? Will I be more socially acceptable? Do you want me to do this? I'll do it. And now you're living the complete opposite of that. Is you're putting yourself first and saying, oh, I have a cutoff time. I'm gonna enjoy it, and then I'm gonna leave.
Yeah,
That's incredible right there.
for sure. Yeah, you also like, I had definitely like an entire friend group when I first got sober kind of fall by the wayside. And I had fellows around me at the time that would say, you know, if these people are supposed to be in your life, Katie, there's nothing you can do to stop that. And
Mm.
so I surrendered to that. And so, like, when I'm dealing in work situations, you know, I know what's mine and what's not, you know. When somebody's drinking and they kind of want that other person to drink and I say no, that's where it stops for me. If you're going to get into your head about, you know, that's like it doesn't belong to me, you know what I mean? Like again, like I just need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
um and maybe it would be different under different circumstances. Maybe if I really needed that job, maybe it would feel a lot more like of a pressure situation, but I don't because I've made so many. I've done good work. I've done good work for a long time, and people trust that and they believe in that. And you know, I don't have to go to every party, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, that's
So
huge. That's like, you breaking out of scarcity and into
exactly.
abundance. And,
Yes.
the drinking atmosphere and using atmosphere, so much of scarcity, do I have enough alcohol? Don't touch my drugs. And will I have this? Do I get everything I need and everything I want? And in your success, you're now just in your lane flourishing, and what's for you is for you.
Yeah. And also too, like
Incredible.
being the sober person in a group where somebody else might be struggling, again, I can be used in that way. So it's like I might go warm up a client, but then maybe we're having side conversations about sobriety and recovery. And, you know, if you are an artist or creative person, you can absolutely exist and thrive in these circles without drinking and using. And there might have been a thought back in the day where it was like, well, I need to drink and use in order to feel, you know, connected or authentic or, you know, on this other level. But it doesn't do that. The truth is that, you know, drugs and alcohol separate. You're separate, you know. It's a mind trick to you know, that you play on yourself to think that you're connecting. And because when those things are gone, if you don't have that connection, you know.
Oh, I'm glad you shared that. I think it's really important for creatives and artists to hear, that sobriety actually can increase the creativity and increase
Yeah.
the connection and
And your
authenticity.
risk of death is a lot less, quite
That part,
possibly.
that part.
You know, you
Yeah.
know, the drugs now are a lot crazier.
And
Maybe, you
also too,
know,
yeah.
huh?
And that you get to experience your art and your craft fully present. I think that is such a cool thing to do.
Yeah,
That's just wild to me. I love that so much. So
yeah.
I was going to ask you what tips you had for the artist, but you already gave it to us. So I want to ask you really quickly before we end. So you shared a lot about, how your life got really big and all your successes and achievements. And I love giving people tools and, opening conversations about how we heal, how we move forward, how we expand. And a lot of people have shared that success actually can disconnect them from their sobriety, or the bigger their life gets, the more cash and prizes they have, the less room for their recovery. And that's clearly not the case for you. So, how do you keep the two connected? And what does success in sobriety look like for you?
I think for me, it's being willing to know that everything in my life is able to blossom because of my recovery. You know, I'm able to do a lot of different things and they don't mean more, like the success of cash and prices doesn't mean more to me than my emotional sanity, my serenity. My success is how free I'm able to be in my body. And how free I'm able to be is a daily choice, right? So it's being able to take care of myself on a daily basis and my ability to show up to others and never letting my sobriety move too far away from me. I mean, that's the sweet spot for me. I don't care about cash and prizes. I grew up with the cash and prizes, and it was emotionally barren.
Mhm.
There was there's no happiness to be found. And that's why you hear stories of people being very wealthy, committing suicide, so my version of success is not mainstream. It's not mainstream. My success is feeling free in my body, feeling free and useful in my body. And I'm able to be useful and free if I take care of myself on a daily basis. And so it sounds really kind of selfish, but in a way, it's really not, because I'm able to help more people when I'm not clouded, right? And, don't get me wrong, I love the vacation. I love doing kind of some fancy things, but that's not my drive. My purpose is not to make more and more and more and more money. It is to have a connection with those around me and being able to help other people along in the process, and to be able to have those relationships, that I thought I was getting when I was using, but I was actually blocking. It's to have things like reciprocity in my relationships. It's to have friendship. It's to have a community. It's to have honesty. It's to have, yeah, things that are not cash and prizes.
I love it.
I hope I answered your question properly. And what I do today, again, to reiterate, is I do the same things that I did at the beginning. I'm a part of a big community. I'm in 12-step recovery. I do the same things that I did at the very beginning, because if it ain't broke, you don't got to fix it. I am steady, clean, and sober, and able to show up in my life in a really beautiful way because I'm sober.
I love it so much. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much. I think that you are such a bright, powerful light in spaces that can be, really confusing or overwhelming. And, around artists and the music industry, they need people like you. And especially with your expertise, it's just like this double whammy. And I think it's so important for people to hear these things. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Do you want to let people know how to connect with you?
You could follow me on Instagram. I'm at Katie Riggs Music, and my website's kathleenriggs.com. But, for fun and to see the random things I may talk about, as well as what I'm up to, yeah, just the Instagram is the best bet.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks again for joining us on today's episode of Sober Daughter with Katie Riggs. We learned all about sobriety, being sober in the music industry, how to keep your recovery fresh, and how to reinvent and redesign your definition of success. I think it's incredible, Katie, and I hope that you have so much more success in the ways that you described. So stay tuned and check us on Instagram, IG, DM us questions, and stay tuned for next week's episode where we'll have another incredible guest and share lots and lots of tools. So see you then. Thank you so much.